This review copy of Sigi, a fart for Melusina, was provided for free by publisher Sometimes.U. Sigi is a knight in shining armor who seems to have an issue with his gas. While exploring one day, he discovers a beautiful mermaid with a splendid voice, but our hero scares her off with an untimely fart. Sigi must now cross the countryside, fighting off zombies and evil animals along the way, in order to have a chance at finding the mermaid again. First off, why does this guy have to fart? I'm fine with juvenile humor, but I feel like there should at least be a reason behind it. A game like Boogerman works because he's supposed to be a superhero with gross powers. With Sigi, or Sigi, however you pronounce it, he farts for no reason. It never plays into the story, he doesn't have any abilities that deal with farting, and none of the enemies seem to play into that theme either. Except for maybe the French fries boss, I guess. It's just really dumb, and not in a fun way. It seems like a running gag born from a lack of ideas. The gameplay is an extremely simplistic 2D platformer, with both ranged and jumping attacks. The starter weapon is a throwing sword, but this can be exchanged for axes, knives, and chicken drumsticks along the way. Enemies are slow, predictable, and very weak, with the exception of the bird who manages to stay just out of reach. Otherwise, the rest of the enemies are chump meat and do little to impede your progress. Levels are a simple point A to point B affair. The adventure lasts 20 levels, all of which are very short, with a few boss fights along the way, and that's it, you beat the game. See that score? 38 minutes, and I was really taking my time. Granted, I didn't achieve 100%, but I can't say I really cared to. There's not much to this game that keeps me wanting to come back for more. Enemies and obstacles pose absolutely no threat and are there purely for the purpose of being dispatched, rather than to act as any real barrier to your progress. It feels like they're just there to waste the player's time. Without meaningful enemies, this kind of game falls apart pretty badly. But to make matters worse, the weapon variety is pointless because most of them act the same exact way. The swords and knives fire straight across, while the other weapons get thrown in an arc. That's all the selection you're getting. Why include all these weapons when they don't change the gameplay at all? In a good game like Super Ghouls and Ghosts, there's a huge difference between each weapon. The lance and the dagger are maybe a bit too similar, but just about every other weapon is distinct. The sickle can be thrown at 2 different angles, the torch acts as a grenade, even if it is terrible, and the crossbow fires multiple projectiles, but only upwards. On top of that, after getting new armor, each weapon gets upgraded and acts almost completely differently. Super Ghouls and Ghosts handles weapon variety very well, but Sigi only bothers with the bare minimum. Even the boss fights are a total joke, simply repeating the same pattern over and over while relying on spawning enemies for any bit of a challenge. The final boss is the only part of the game that comes anywhere near to being threatening, but at that point it's both too little and too late. Graphically, the game is pretty nice. The animation for the main character is alright, there's a subtle scanlines effect which is cool, the way everything pixelates for a moment when starting a level, the parallax scrolling in the background. There are some little touches here and there that go a long way towards making the game look better. What isn't as great is the constant screen shaking. I have never found a game with a more offensive screen shaking than this, and it cannot be turned off here. The camera also follows the player way too closely, as it'll move vertically for every jump. Most 2D platformers will only move the camera whenever necessary, because doing it too much can be disorientating. Take a look at Yoshi's Island or Donkey Kong Country. The camera typically only moves vertically once the player has landed on a platform, and even then it moves smooth and slow. The player shouldn't have to think about this kind of thing, but the way that Sigi handles it turns jumping into an awkward and stressful situation. Am I being too harsh on Sigi? Absolutely not. In fact, I'd say I'm being perfectly fair. This game brings absolutely nothing to the table, and what it does set out to do isn't done particularly well either. I've reviewed my fair share of low-tier indie games in the past, but the two that I actually kind of grew fond of were North and Alterik. Neither game looked all that great, and both were lacking in the gameplay department, but they at least tried to do something a little bit different. They don't get a strong recommendation from me, but I do recognize the effort that they put forth. With Sigi, not even an attempt was made. This is as basic as 2D platformers get. Does that make the game inherently bad? No, of course not, but it shouldn't be sold for any price either. I made the same argument for my review of Deep Ones. There are so many games out there that have been released for free and they have so much love and care put into them. So these days, when I end up playing something like Sigi, a game where the developers practically didn't even try, I get really disappointed. You have to live up to a certain standard going into this. If your intention is just to do the bare minimum and your game lasts less than an hour, then you really shouldn't be asking for any money. Have the courtesy to put this out for free. Use it as a way to get some practice, then for the sequel, you can really pull out all the stops. Sigi isn't a bad game, I have played far worse, but it is so bland and uninteresting that it doesn't even deserve a mention. Comparing this game to a fart might actually be appropriate. It's over and done with quickly, but that doesn't make the smell any less pleasant. Thank you for watching my review on Sigi, a fart for Melusina. If you'd like to be updated on my future videos, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on Twitter, or check me out on Discord.